What is up, all you GBA type fans? This is Tom. I'm here bringing you guys my Week 6 match against John and the New Orleans Pelippers. Now, unfortunately, I couldn't get a team builder up yesterday, so what this video is going to be the team builder, kind of a quicker wrap up into John's team, then it's going to go right into the battle. I'm going to try and be a little faster. I know that some people don't like when the team builder is necessarily matched up with the actual battle. I will add an annotation to allow anyone who's not interested to go right to the battle. But for now, let me just go right into John's team, get a brief explanation of what I consider a threat and all that, and then we'll go into my team, and then right into the battle. So let's go. Looking at John's team, the entire top line is pretty much just big red letters, threats. Middle line, pretty much just walls, and the two bottom line, don't really see those coming. Remember how I said Conkeldurr plus Darmanitan were threats to my team for Geo and then Cooper at the time, his team? Well, let's combine those two, give it more coverage, and allow it to pretty much bash through the majority of my team. That's Infernape, because the only thing that wants to take Fire-type moves from Infernape is Vaporeon, but doesn't want to take Fighting-type moves. What wants to take Fighting-type moves? Gardevoir or Nidoqueen. What don't they want to take? Fire-type moves. Then that's kind of the problem with Infernape. Next up we have Sneasel. Now, besides Celesteela, which would have to be, very defensive in order to take on Sneasel, Sneasel has the capability of, setting up Swords Dances. It has, very powerful stab knockoffs, even though it's, going to be carrying a Violite. It could be Banded, could be Life Orb. Doesn't matter. Sneasel being fast, it speed ties with both of my fastest Mons, and just having that Ice Shard is very nice against my team, because again, Vaporeon could want to take the Ice moves, doesn't necessarily want to take the Dark moves, in addition to taking hits from Infernape. So those two just, in tandem is going to be kind of a big problem to my team. Then we have Jolteon, which is faster than my entire team. Having Volt Absorb, having, it's relatively, restricted coverage, but still being that threat. We've seen John in the past use, an Assault Vest set. We've seen it be Quick Feet. Hell, even Nick used Quick Feet against me last season. So Jolteon is going to be a problem. It is going to be fast. I suspect some sort of, an AV set from John, because we've seen it in the past. But it is going to be able to pivot around my team. I have to keep Nidoqueen alive in order to ensure he doesn't just freely Volt Switch across whatever he wants to. Next up we have Bulu. Now, while I do have one of the, 2 checks to Bulu in Celesteela, he can run a bulk up set, even after some chip damage, or, a fair amount of damage, he can, if he's a Scarf variant, he can probably 2 or 3 shot me with a Wood Hammer. He could also just be a setup set. Doesn't matter. Bulu's always a threat. Very limited switch-ins on my team to a Bulu. None of my walls really want to take a lot of hits that are not named the waifu. And then finally we have Porygon Z. Now, while I have, the Eviolite version of Porygon, he has the more offensive version. Now, he can Nasty Plot, he can be the Scarf variant, even just adaptability, Tri-Attack. Porygon 2, full Spit F, is not going to appreciate that, neither is Celesteela, especially if it is defensive. Vaporeon's not going to enjoy that. If he does, go for Nasty Plot, he is faster, he can go for T-Bolt, Ice Beam to hit Nidoqueen, all that type of garbage. So, that entire top line are all problems. I see maybe 3 of those coming, because it's just good. Namely, Infernape's going to be there. I think Jolteon's going to be there. And then the other 3 are kind of toss-ups. But he does have a reason, and there are, there are pros and cons to bring any of them. Next up, we have his wall core, so to say. Melodic, now that that Burn has been nerfed, and because Melodic, even from last season, was very good, I suspect John is going to bring that, because it's fantastic. Melodic against my team, it stops Vaporeon, it stops Porygon 2, he could, he can status around my team. Overall, he can just recover and be that gigantic pain in the ass set. And the fact that I named it Tom Brady, coming from a Jets fan, bothers me even more. So, Melodic is going to be a problem. I think it's going to be physically defensive to take on things like Hitmonlee, Zygarde. Then Skarmory is mainly his only form of hazard removal, so maybe it'll come, but on the same token, it does invite in Thundurus, which is not necessarily something he wants, considering that Thundurus is going to be a giant problem to his team. Skarmory can, set up the hazards. I have very limited hazard removal. Granted, though, both of which are decent against Skarmory. Maybe not Hitmonlee, but, I do have the capability of getting rid of hazards if he does bring Skarmory. Next up, we have Uxie. Uxie is just a wall with pivot and knockoff and some sort of, status. It can set up rocks, it can pivot out, it can just be annoying for a while, can foul play. I've seen that before against my team. If he brings it, that's going to be his hazard setter. If Skarmory's not there, he's going to bring one of the two. But if he goes with Yuxi, he doesn't have hazard removal, but he does have pivot, so that's important, I think. Then finally we have Goodra. Now, it can be it is going to be his AV Mon, because that's kind of what John does. So he can run AV on that. He could run AV on Jolteon as a secondary check to Thundurus. His primary switch-in for Thundurus is probably going to be a Goodra, so I have to think about that accordingly. But overall, again, I see two of those coming. The two of those, three of those, maybe. It doesn't really matter because the bottom line, none of those are coming. Scolipede, I have a Celesteela, and while it can speed boost, he doesn't necessarily have the right. I block the dual stab. I'm not affected by Earthquake, and its special stat is poo-poo garbage anyway. Then Sigilyph, while Porygon 2 can get toxic, Sigilyph is just not really that good. It's basically like 40% Alakazam and like 60% Kadabra. So that's kind of how I look at that. Overall, yeah, like I said, I see 3 of the top line, maybe 3 of the middle line. If he wants to get a little bit more aggressive, like me, it could be 2 of the middle line, 4 of the top line, and then really pressure my team. So it's kind of how I'm looking at his team. Now we're going to go into my team, so I'll see you there. Alright guys, we're in the team builder. The idea of the team here is we pretty much have 1 straight wall, 2 bulky-ish attackers, and then, the rest are sweepers if not choiced. We have Celesteela, Thundurus, Nidoqueen, Porygon 2, Azelf, and Zygarde Doggo. Starting off with Celesteela, this will be a Brave Celesteela. 68 attack, gives me enough attack to pretty much hit things super hard with Heavy Slam, or in the case of Acrobatics, as you see, I have Octoberry. My team doesn't like Infernape, as I stated, and as a result, the only way I'm going to actually be able to knock out Infernape is if I lure it in, and then allow it to go for Flare Blitz or Fire Punch or whatever, and I could take it, and then I can go ahead and knock it right back out with the boosted Acrobatics. Heavy Slam is a good middle ground play for things like Bulu, even Sneasel, just to get off big damage. Flamethrower is there for things like Skarmory. And then, of course, Leech Seed is just the passive recovery that Celesteela pretty much always needs. Almost a lot of HP, almost max defense. Unfortunately, I wouldn't be able to get the kill, or at least calcs in my favor if I didn't go Brave. And of course, Celesteela is slower than everything on his team, so it didn't frankly matter. But Celesteela is kind of my answer to Infernape if he doesn't, in fact, click a fire move when Celesteela is in, and I haven't popped the Octoberry or I'm not super low. Next up, we have Thundurus. Now, this Thundurus is a Life Orb set. It's fast enough to outpace a Porygon Z, Timid. It's mixed, but I'm still going to run the Timid nature because Knockoff and U-Turn are not necessarily what I'm using to get damage, just good for chip. The Knockoff is there because Goodra and or Jolteon are going to be his immediate switches right into Thundurus. I've watched John long enough. I know how he plays. Just like the Regenerator AV set last season on Reuniclus, Goodra's pretty much a staple for him to come right in with Goodra or even Jolteon, and they probably will have an AV or be bulky or something along those lines because Thundurus is super threatening to his team. Nothing wants to take a T-Bolt outside of specifically those two. Him Power Flying is there to bop the Bulu. It's also there to hit Infernape super hard. And then U-Turn is there for pivot. I don't really want to Volt Switch out when Jolteon could in fact have Volt Absorb. Next special attack, Bulk, that isn't in the speed. And overall, it's just a typical Life Orb Thundurus. Next, we have Nidoqueen. Now, Nidoqueen is, as you see, it's jolly. It's going to be fast enough to outpace an Adamant Bulu because if I tried to outpace Jolly Bulu, I would have been investing almost entirely into speed, not enough into attack or HP, as you see. This is bulky. This can take 1 Flare Blitz and live from a Infernape, of course, if it's not boosted or banded, or even Life Orb. The Poison Jab hits a lot of things on his team that Thunder Punch or Earthquake wouldn't necessarily hit, or of course vice versa. Thunder Punch is there for the Skarmory. It's also there for the Melodic. Poison Jab and Earthquake are there, just nice coverage for his team. Poison Jab hits Bulu, Earthquake hits Jolteon and Infernape, and of course Poison Jab also hits a Goodra in case it wants to come in and think that I am special. I also have T-Spikes on this set. I was thinking that if I ran T-Spikes, I could try and ensure that I get some good passive damage off on a lot of his things. Granted, though, it does give Melodic Marvel Scale, but I thought maybe if I get 2 up, then I could ensure that I can chip away gradually at Melodic's HP. And of course, Life Orb is there for that added oomph in power against his bulky things on his team. Next up, we have Spadef Porygon 2, pretty much what it's been for mostly every single week, but the thing about this Porygon 2 is that it has enough investment in both the defense and the special defense to take a max attack, max special attack, superpower, and Draco from Goodra. Now that's obviously, speculation, but it's not out of the ordinary to run like Draco plus superpower on, of course, an AV Goodra. So that's kind of the thought there. Bolt Beam hits his team really hard, and then I have Sub because whereas Porygon 2 is super slow, some of the things that it can sub up on, especially on a switch, things like Skarmory, if he tries to go into Bulu or go into Infernape, or even, Melodic, I can get some damage off on it behind a sub, force him to attack to break the sub, then of course switch out. But it also means that Infernape nor Bulu have a free switch into Porygon 2. Porygon 2 here is the traditional wall set, and that's pretty much as it's going to be this week. I can't really do anything much with it in terms of offense. Then we have Choice Banded Azelf, the first week that Azelf will be brought. It's going to be Stab, Thunder and Fire Punch, and U-Turn. Pretty much max because that speed ties with Sneasel. The idea here is just to get off big damage. I could U-turn out and pivot on things like Skarmory. I could pivot out on things like Uxie, even Melodic, and get big damage off with Thunder Punch on things like Jolteon. Zen Headbutt hits almost everything, except obviously Skarmory, but that's what I have the Thunder Punch and the Fire Punch for. This is going to be more of a hard press set, just to ensure that I get pressure on his team, and I still have the capability of pivoting out if I need to do so. Finally, we have Doggo, and this set might look a little weird at first, but the idea here is, okay, it has enough speed to outpace Infernape, a Jolly Infernape. It has enough special attack investment to bop the Bulu, I think a 2-hit KO on a non-Scarf Bulu through grassy terrain. And then, of course, we have 1,000 Arrows and E-Speed with Dragon Dance. Now, the E-Speed is there to pick off probably an Infernape if it goes for close combat. It's also just nice against a lot of his team if it's not named Melodic, and even Skarmory doesn't really want to take D-Dance or 1,000 Arrows, especially a +1 Life Orb. So that's kind of the idea for the team here. Like it looks Thundurus, Azelf, and Zygarde are in good positions to do a lot of damage to his team. Nidoqueen is there to kind of take a hit, but also deliver a few big hits and set up the T-Spikes. Porygon 2 is there to be annoying as always, since he does have a fair amount of special attackers, and then the waifu for Laifu is there to kind of lure Infernape and then take hits otherwise from Sneasel and or Bulu. So that's the team. Now we'll hop right into the battle. I will add an annotation to show when the battle is in case you guys want to skip this. Alright guys, this is the team. We see that John ends up bringing Infernape plus Porygon Z plus Jolteon. A little shocking that he brought Porygon Z, considering I thought that maybe even Bulu or Sneasel would come in that place. Sneasel does have a pretty good opportunity to knock off whatever it wants, plus ice coverage. Bulu, while I understand that Celesteela, Nidoqueen, and even Thundurus kind of threaten it out, it is of course always a threat, and he could be that annoying sub-Leech Seed set because, as you guys know, Shifter does not want to come in on a Bulu, ever. So, we see that his wall cores are going to be what looks like Melodic, Uxie, and Goodra. Goodra has to be AV. Maybe Jolteon is AV as a secondary check to Thundurus. Melodic is going to be the pain in the ass defensive set, and of course Uxie is going to be some sort of U-turn pivot thing with hazards. No Scarm means no hazard removal, but also on my team also don't have hazard removal, so whenever rocks, or in my case T-Spikes, go up, they're up to stay. Overall, kind of what I expected him to bring. This is going to be a challenging match, but of course, as we saw last season, those were challenging matches too, and there's no easy win in the GBA. I gotta bring my best game, and I think I can do that against John here. If any of you remember from last season, I did get 6-0'd twice from John. My intention here is to not let that happen, or ever let that happen again, and I kind of want to start doing that right here. He leads off with Uxie, and I'm going to lead off with Azelf. Weird thing about this generation, and I'm just U-turning out, he obviously seeing that I'm choice banded here, is that I don't understand how last season, when Amon came out first, it showed that it was faster. But this season, or even this generation, when Amon comes out first, they're not necessarily faster. The same way that if Amon gets the grassy terrain HP back, it doesn't determine which one's faster. So, like, you kind of can't look at that anymore as a means of finding out just information subtly. He's going to U-turn out as well. I'm going to go out into Nidoqueen, but then of course I'm going to switch right out into Porygon 2. It is my Spadef wall to sponge hits from things like Goodra and even Jolteon. And he's going to go for Ice Beam. Now, I was checking my calcs. A modest Ice Beam was going to do upwards of like 65 to 75% to Nidoqueen. I didn't necessarily want that damage to happen, and I thought, well, you know, Porygon 2 is going to take this with literally no problem, and I can just switch in, take the hit, and then I could sub right up. My thought here was that maybe he would want to go right into Infernape, and if he was Scarf, he would show that he can go for U-turn. He could, of course, a physical U-turn would, of course, break my sub. It is coming from an Infernape, but instead he goes to Uxie. I thought to myself, well, I can go right into Thundurus, but then what? I'm not choiced, and I mean, it'll be Life Orb I could knock off, but this Uxie wasn't necessarily in a range to get KO'd to a knockoff uninvested, and I didn't necessarily want to take... I didn't know a lot about his set yet. He could, of course, you know, go for Psychic. He could have Ice Beam on his set. We see that, like I just said, he has Psychic, so far we've seen U-turn, Psychic, and Stealth Rock. Stealth Rock is up, so it means I'm not getting rid of it. I'm going to recover here behind the sub just to ensure that I'm healthy for things like Porygon Z and Goodra. However, Uxie here is just pretty much allowed to do whatever it wants. That's kind of a problem. I mean, Uxie's always a bulky problem, regardless of who uses it, especially on John's team, when it complements just his other offense and even his other bulky options. It is very nice, and we're seeing that right here. He knocks off, and I'm going to go for Ice Beam to see if I could do a little bit more damage, maybe get a freeze. It doesn't really matter. I can tell right now this Uxie is fully Spadef, probably a little bit of speed to outpace my base 80s, and of course all these base 60s that I have in terms of my walls. It's going to Psychic to try and continue to break my sub. But I also know that once my sub is broken, he is going to knock off. He's going to try and get rid of my Violet, so I have to think to myself, what wants to take the knockoff to ensure that I can, you know, still kind of maintain some pressure? Go through my head, I say, well, Thundurus is going to come in, it's going to take rocks. I don't necessarily want, you know, that to lose its Life Orb. Maybe Zygarde. I could have also went into Nidoqueen, but with him being Spadef and at, you know, a little bit over 50%, I also don't want to come in, probably be slower, assuming he does have enough speed to outpace a Nidoqueen, you know, a lot of speed investment Nidoqueen, and I don't want to take that Psychic. I'm going to allow the knockoff to remove my Life Orb from Zygarde Doggo. Then I'm going to go right into Thundurus. I assumed here that maybe he would switch. Maybe he's Psychic. I don't think. Yeah, actually, that's exactly what it was. I suspected that if I went for 1,000 Arrows, it's going to do literally jack all to a Melodic, especially not invested. So I do make the double. I am going to go into Thundurus, and then I'm going to predict him to go into Goodra, and I'm going to knock right off. See, like, I've watched John for so long that I know that this is what his switch is going to be. And we see that it does a lot of damage to his Goodra, and it does take off a nice chunk of damage. I am going to U-turn, so I am kind of boosting up my U-turn, my overall Life Orb damage. And I am going to take another 25% when I come right back in. But I think that it's necessary to get this damage off on this Goodra, because that means that now, the next time I come in, he can take a T-Bolt plus an HP Flying. And even if I go for knockoff again, he's not going to take the T-Bolt plus the HP Flying, or the knockoff plus the HP Flying. Overall, I think it was just my best option right there. He's going to go for Draco Meteor. This is going to do a good chunk of damage. I am going to find out here that he is, in fact, a modest Goodra. And I thought to myself, well, maybe he's going to go, and if he has Superpower, he would show it right here. I'm going to recover, going to be able to take that damage, and of course, he's going to go right into Infernape. As a result of doing this, actually, I'm actually going to double. But even if I did recover right there, and he got an Infernape for free, I would have to pick something to die, which is going to be the case every time Infernape comes in against my team. But instead, I'm trying to be aggressive, I'm trying to stay ahead of him, and the way he brings it in, thinking to myself, okay, maybe he's Swords Dance, maybe he's Life Orb, maybe he just has U-turn to pivot out and ensure he maintains a proper matchup. I'm going to try and call his bluff right here, and I am actually going to stay in because just, you know, just speed to speed, I do outpace him. And we are going to confirm that he's not Scarfed, because otherwise he'd stay in and go for U-turn. It probably would knock me out considering I have no bulk investment whatsoever. I'm going to U-turn out, and I am going to be able to pick off this Uxie as we saw last time. It did a good over 50%. So the Uxie's down, but it still did exactly what it wanted to do. It got up rocks. It was pretty much uninhibited against my Porygon 2. And he did gain a lot of information against my team just in regards to staying in and doing whatever it wanted to do. Right here, he's going to go into his fastest mod, as you should on a double down, or just on a typical U-turn pivot, and you can go into whatever you like. He's going to go for Ice Beam. I know I can live it unless he's Specs, but if he was Specs, I'd find that out real quick. I'm going to go for Toxic Spikes, and right here is probably a mistake. We see that my physical attacker is Celesteela plus Zygarde, and with rocks up, that means the Thundurus is not going to be able to effectively pick away at things like Melodic. So I just gave Melodic Marvel Scale. Not my brightest moment right there. I was kind of, honing in on that idea. Instead, I think maybe I should have just went for a Poison Jab right there and then gone out into Porygon 2. I would have been able to take that hit regardless. I would have gotten off some really solid damage against Porygon Z. And overall, maybe I could have, just the damage I would have had. I wouldn't be able to clean knock it out at full HP, which is, it's unfortunate. But it also would have meant that Nidoqueen would have went down, and it wouldn't necessarily have meant much. But it also would have meant that T-Spikes aren't necessarily up. So it was give and take. I do think that, in hindsight, looking at it, T-Spikes was a mistake. It didn't help me unless I had 2 sets up, because then Melodic would of course be pressured more heavily, and overall I would have been in a better position. But now it's only 12%, he can heal that up, unlike last week against Crimson, where his Slowbro nor his Serena, with the pressure I was able to give on him, would be able to recover against that and still maintain some sort of offensive pressure. He's going for all-out pummeling. I don't know why he didn't have the fire Z Crystal instead, but cool animation. He gets to pummel my face off with many fists and feet. So that shows me, like I said, he's not Scarfed. It means that Azelf is going to come in here for free. I can lock myself into Zen Headbutt, but with the fact that now Melodic is going to come right in and it's going to get Toxic, and it's now going to have Marvel Scale, this is going to do literally jack shit. So, like I said, in hindsight, if I didn't give this Melodic Poison, and I instead attempted to pound away with things like Zen Headbutt, I could have been in a much, much better position, because assuming that he didn't get the Marvel Scale boost here, and I U-turn, that probably did upward of 50%, and I could have went right into Thundurus instead of Porygon 2, and I could have just started clicking T-Bolt, because that would have either forced me to see if Jolteon has Quick Feet, or doesn't have Quick Feet and has Volt Absorb instead, or Goodra would have taken the damage over and over and over, like I had expected. Uxie was already down, so it's not like that was taking any special defensive hits as it is. Here, ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, is where I make the biggest fuck up of the game, and I stay in. I think to myself, maybe he'll switch. I didn't even scout for anything besides what I expect is on every Melodic set, Recover. And I sub up behind the Toxic, and right here is where the sadness sets in. He has rocks up, so Thundurus now can't come in and break this Melodic. And since I'm not necessarily a Nasty Plot set, can't break him, because Thundurus, the T-Bolt is going to do upwards like 60 to 75%. So as long as he's above that range, so that means that he's recovered at full HP after a 1 round of the poison damage, he's still able to take a T-Bolt when I come right in. I don't know his attacking move yet. Frankly, I don't think it really matters. But setting up the T-Spikes, I think, was pretty much a dumb idea, just overall. And then especially letting my Porygon 2 get Toxic. Because as anyone knows who's been in any sort of league format knows that once a Porygon 2 is Toxic, it's essentially like knocking off its Eviolite. It just can't keep up with what the damage it's going to be taking. And then, of course, the damage it's going to have to mitigate with Recover against the Toxic. I am going to T-Bolt. We see he has Sub, so he's a Sub-Toxic set. What a set. We don't know his attacking move yet, but we see that I can break his Sub. You know, it's just John knows how to use melodic the same way that I enjoyed using melodic last season. John is figuring out that with the nerf to burn, as we saw against Dan, and the fact that it is just such a very, very good mon, he's able to effectively pivot out when he needs to and otherwise just pressure as much as possible. I am going to make an aggressive double here, and I'm going to Azelf. I expect he's going to recover. I know I can't kill with T-Punch, but I can get a good chunk of damage off, and I can see what type of item he is, or what type of his attacking move is. I think to myself, well, if I lock myself in a T-Punch, even though I am Choice Banded, I mean, nothing else is going to want to take it, but he can go right into Jolteon. That is going to bait out the Jolteon, and we see that if I didn't give him the poison, as I've been saying over and over and over and over, I probably would have been able to kill with 2, and I don't think, you know, what is traditionally a AV modest Goodra would want to take that T-Punch. But I am going to attempt to make a double. I am going to go out and just see if he is going to make the double into Jolteon, just to get some information for myself. I guess I since I did make the double before he did, since I am faster, I'm not able to see what his ability is, but it does allow him to get some residual damage off on this Jolteon. He does get the toxic damage, and just overall, I can try and switch out here. That's exactly what I'm going to do. I am behind. I am so very behind because I put myself in this position. I'm going to try and make a play here, and I am going to see if he has T-Bolt, because that was the only move that allowed him to kill me from the range that I was at. But instead, he's going to make the smart play. He's going to go for Hidden Power Ice. He's going to knock me right out. And right here, I lost. I'm not spoiling the match. That's just pretty much how it is. With Melodic being, with the Marvel Scale boosted, having Substitute, none of my walls can break his subs. I mean, outside of Porygon 2, but of course I'm already toxic, so I'm on a timer as it is. I end up seeing here that he actually is not Volt Absorb, he's Quick Feet. So, just in hindsight, that means even if I was locked into T-Punch with Azelf, granted it probably would have did upwards like 25-30% to this Jolteon, but he wouldn't have been able to take those hits over and over, and I am faster than mostly everything that's not named Porygon Z. So I will say that right here, yeah, I did kind of screw up. I could have went into Zygarde Doggo here, and I could have went for E-Speed, but he wasn't necessarily in a range yet to die to a non-Life Orb E-Speed. If I had Life Orb, a little bit of a different story. I could have then knocked something else out, but then again, he could have just went right into Melodic, and then just, you know, taken that E-Speed, taken 1,000 arrows, taken whatever, and recovered right up. So, things aren't looking good for me. I go into Doggo here, and I think to myself, it's a 50-50. Either I go for D-Dance and attempt to win as he goes out into Melodic. I can see his last move. It's probably going to be Scald. Or I go for E-Speed and try and get the roll to knock him out. I believe it was a roll right here. 41 to 48% was my roll. So I would have gone for E-Speed. He would have knocked me out with HP Ice, and then he would have died to Toxic. That's probably what would have happened, but instead I just try and make the play. It doesn't work, and I'm going to end up losing here. He's going to Volt Switch right out, or at least just go for T-Bolt, whatever he has on my Celesteela, and I am going to end up losing 5-0 to John. It seems that John is my GBA Kryptonite. I don't like it. I really don't like it, because this hurts, again, just the same way it hurt last season, you know, except for, what, 1 differential point? I got blown out. I think all the wind in my sails coming after my wins against both Crimson and Geo. Those are gone, I think. I go for Flamethrower, thinking that maybe he would stay in, or otherwise. I could have went for Heavy Slam. It still wouldn't have killed, and he would still be faster. And yeah, that's it. 5-0 loss. It sucks losing to John again. It's just This one hurt, just like every loss I have against John, and it puts me in a rough spot, because now I have to win against MV, and I have to win against Mono. And if I lose to either of them or both of them, then I'm pretty much put really far back in my division, as well as my conference. We have Callum, who's doing very well. We have John, who just beat me. We have Envy, who if I lose to is also then going to be ahead of me. And then that puts That puts me at pretty much 4 losses, and I don't know about you, but I pretty much have to go 8-4 or even 7-5 to get to the playoffs based on the strength of my division, my conference, and overall just how good every coach is this season. So I pretty much have to buckle down from here and attempt to bring more heat to the trick house than Envy is going to bring against me. I have to prep my ass off and play my ass off and ensure that I can actually beat Envy and then try and beat Mono the week after. I know, spoilers, Mono just lost to Chimp this week, so he's no longer undefeated, but he's still a damn good coach, and he did just win the TTM tournament, so props to him. This is the gauntlet right here. These 3 weeks, John, Envy, Mono, I gotta buckle down. I have to win. I have to do my best to ensure that things don't start slipping out in regards to this season, because I do want to win. I know you guys want to see me win, and I know that I want to be as impressive as possible to whoever chooses to watch this video and all the GBA videos. So, this is a rough one. I know now that John is my kryptonite. He is someone who has my number pretty much every time he plays me, and I hate it because I love John as a person. I hate him as a coach. I really hate him as a coach. I hate his teams he drafts. I hate him as a coach. I'll say it out loud, and I'm just upset at this loss because in hindsight, looking at so many different things I could have done, and namely just setting up T-spikes. I think without it, I did have the capability of beating him. If we have a replay, if I never even thought to put T-spikes on my Nita Queen, I think I could have had this. But that's theorying. I'm gonna do my best to bounce back from this, and I hope I see you all next week for my match against Envy. I know I got to bring some pretty hot sets to take him on. So until then, I'll see you guys soon.